Starting off with this Project Veritas exposed. Now, Project Veritas, they go and they capture a lot of video from a lot of different places, people in undercover ways. That's kind of the gist of it. So if you're not familiar with Project Veritas, that is what they do, is they try to catch people saying things and exposing things. And in this particular instance, CNN themselves were exposed for, CNN was exposed really admitting to being propaganda for the DNC is what they've admitted to being. So let's go ahead and take a look at this Project Veritas video, and you guys can see for yourself what was being said here. Take a look.
You guys saying that news propaganda?
Oh no.
Okay, can you define propaganda? Like, I think I know, but like, how is it, what's the mechanism?
If the agenda, say, is to get like Matt Gaetz right now, he's this Republican, he's a problem for the Democratic Party because he's so conservative, right? And he can cause a lot of hiccups in passing of laws. So it would be great for the Democratic Party to get him out. So we're going to keep running those stories to keep hurting him and make it so that it can't be buried and just settled outside of court and just if we keep pushing that, it's helping us. That's propaganda. It's helping us in some way.
Oh, okay. So they're saying, look, we're pushing these certain things and it's good for us and it's good for the DNC. It's good for the Democratic Party. They're wanting to, harm this guy, Matt Gaetz, because he could do harm to them when it comes to passing bills. So he was saying, he's a conservative and he could get in the way of them passing certain bills. And so it's good for us to just continue running these stories and we'll run them and it's good for the DNC and it's good for us because it's good clickbait or whatever. That is not news journalism, actually. And CNN should be ashamed of themselves if they're not already. They should have already known for a long time now that they're just clickbait and propaganda. But this confirms it even more so, confirms the suspicion that many of us had, which is they're in bed with the DNC. They're working with Democrats. They are attempting to, smear and do everything they can to harm the Republican Party, and they sweep anything negative about Democrats under the rug. We saw this with Joe Biden and the Tara Reade story when Joe Biden was accused of sexual assault or sexual harassment of Tara Reade. CNN didn't say anything about that story for 2 weeks. 2 weeks went by. CNN didn't even whisper a word about that story, about that woman making that claim. Yet when it comes to somebody like Matt Gaetz, they're all over a story that is really ultimately what started off as this salacious story of, Matt Gaetz is sex trafficking these young minors, international sex trafficking ring. They're trying to make it sound like Matt Gaetz is involved in this really sinister, terrible, this behavior that he's so Trumpian. They're looking at him like he's like Trump. He's like Epstein, even worse. And now, as we've seen more and more of the story come out, it's really ultimately resulted in, it's just, turns out it was over the age of consenting adults having consensual relations of some kind that they don't really even know about. I mean, look at this story here. I want to show you guys this story. Here it is. This is from Politico. New details shed light on Gaetz Bahamas trip. So this was just released a couple of hours ago from Politico. Now, remember, over the last week, it's been 2 weeks, even Matt Gaetz, sex predator, sex trafficker, which is really just even that term. When you hear sex trafficking, you're thinking, wow, like that is some sort of pedophile ring, right? Or real sinister stuff. And in reality, the law, even though it's absolutely not right and it's not legal, it's still the actual crime they were accusing him of is less than when you hear sex trafficking, what that means, what that makes you feel, the imagery it brings to your mind, what the actual crime was less than that. What they were accusing him of was having a relationship with an underage woman or a girl at the age of 17, and that he was flying this 17-year-old girl around various locations, not just in the United States, but offshore. So that was technically, because if he was flying around somebody underage, taking him with her on trips, that would be considered sex trafficking, because you're taking a minor with you for the purpose of having sex with them, apparently, or wherever you're going to take them, international places. So that's international sex trafficking is what that actually results down to as a crime. So they were accusing him of this. That sounds really sinister. You know that all people are going to hear, and CNN knows this. They know that you're going to hear Matt Gaetz, sex trafficking, international, illegal, all this bad stuff. And that's the only thing you're going to remember about Matt Gaetz. If you are somebody that you've got a busy life, you have children, you have a job, you've got things going on, and you're not reading the news 24/7, that's the headline you hear. And that's what sticks. You're not then going back and researching like I did, of course, because that's what I do, is I look it up. What's the new stuff going on with Matt Gaetz? And then this story, which is buried several headlines down when you do a Google search, pops up finally, an update to the whole ordeal. But already the propaganda is out there. Already the damage has been done to Matt Gaetz. Already low information people are going to sit there and say, oh, okay, I consumed the headline. The headline was Matt Gaetz, investigation for sex trafficking of minors internationally. And that's what I'm going to remember. And that's all I need to know. Matt Gaetz bad. Matt Gaetz really bad. Matt Gaetz Epstein bad. Matt Gaetz is bad. Meanwhile, here's the update to that story. New details shed light on Gaetz' Bahamas trip, according to Politico, right? Says right here that what happened was it was a September 2018 trip to the Bahamas. And the women, so what happened was most of the people who decided to take this trip to the Bahamas for fun in September of 2018 went and met up and took 2 private planes to the Bahamas. But Matt Gaetz, being a member of Congress, he actually took a commercial flight. So he was the only person, if not one of the only people, that flew to the Bahamas on a commercial plane rather than taking a private jet. So he's already, they can't say, oh, Matt Gaetz, using private jet. Did he pay for it? Was he using congressional funds to do that? So he took a commercial airliner out on this Bahamas trip. It says that there were at least 5 young women on the trip, including the young woman in question. However, it turns out that the young woman in question that they believed was 17 at the time of this trip and they investigated, turns out she was actually 18, turning 19 that year. So the trip was September of 2018. She was born apparently in December of 1999. That makes her 18 in September of 2018. And in fact, turning 19. That I believe, right? Is that right? That's right, right? Was my math off on that? I don't think my math was off on that, was it? It might have been. Let's see. Let's just double check this before I continue saying anymore. So 2018, and she was born apparently in 1999. Right. So she would have been turning 19 that December, but she was 18 in September at the time of this trip. So they're saying, well, this is what they were looking at. They were looking at this. They said that apparently, but this is the sinister thing that they're saying. But questions surrounding the ages of some of the women surfaced immediately upon their return. 3 of them looked so young when they returned on Besher's private plane that U.S. Customs briefly stopped and questioned him, according to sources familiar with the trip, including a woman on the flight. Okay, so these 18-year-old, 19-year-old women looked young. And so, oh, that's sinister. They looked young. So maybe they were over the age of 18, but they looked young. And it was enough for U.S. Customs to stop them and say, hey, show us your IDs. How old are you? And then that was that. They showed their IDs, and it turned out they were actually all over the age of 18. They were consenting adults, and that was that. But they make it sound, well, but they looked really young, right? It says then that it says here that, absent from this 2018 Bahamas trip was another official in the circle. Who wasn't there was the Seminole County tax collector, Joel Greenberg. That is the guy that has kind of sparked the entire controversy, right? Because Joel Greenberg is the one who's being investigated for sex trafficking underage girls and amongst other things. A wide-ranging, there's a few things that he's being accused of. He wasn't even on that trip. So the trip that they're accusing Matt Gaetz of doing something really sinister, Epstein-level sinister, actually the guy that was the root of the investigation wasn't even on that trip. So, You know, that's it. Look, it just kind of, after a couple of weeks, it turns out that so far there's nothing here. They apparently they confiscated Matt Gaetz' phone at one point. They looked through his phone. The authorities did. They looked through his girlfriend's phone at the time. And that was that. At this point, there are still no charges against Matt Gaetz. As the investigation continues to unfold, as we're getting more information, it turns out what started as these accusations of sex trafficking minors internationally has boiled down to consenting adults taking a trip to the Bahamas and Matt Gaetz taking a commercial airliner to get there. So, yeah. When CNN says we're propaganda, essentially, that, yeah, we're doing what is in the best interest of us and the headlines that work for us and the stories that work for us and our audience, and we're helping the Democratic Party, we're helping them achieve their goals, which is eradicating the House of these Republicans, trying to flip seats to Democrats so that Democrats could have a stronger hold of the House. When CNN says that, that's exactly what they're doing. That's exactly what they've been doing. They're acting as pure and absolute propaganda. And it is shameful and disgusting, honestly. This is not news. This is not journalism. This is not what it's supposed to be. CNN, which is supposed to be a trusted news source, people still cite CNN. People are still citing these websites saying, well, they're the truth. You know, you're fake news and they're real. And so what's your source? You know, when anybody brings up some other story that maybe has different information, they say, well, who's your source? And then you mention a story. Oh, well, I heard on CNN. You know, they're still viewed as a trusted news source by many, many, many people. A lot of people out there are not that interested in politics. They're not that interested in news. They hear the headlines, they see the headlines, and they move on from that. And that's the problem. CNN knows this. The Democratic Party knows this as well. So they're, you know, greasing their friends at CNN, who knows how, and they're telling them, hey, make sure you run these stories against our opponents because we want them out. That is not news. That is not journalism. That is not trustworthy. That is just pure propaganda for the DNC. And now, Project Veritas, thanks to them, we have them admitting to it on tape, something we've all pretty much known for a while now. All right, guys, please be sure to send me your comments and thoughts. I appreciate hearing from you. You can email me, kim@KimIverson.com. That is how you can get to me. If you've got questions, comments, you want to send me some more stories, I always love to hear from you. If you've got video yourself, you know, if you've got some undercover video, send it my way. Kim@KimIverson.com is how you can reach me. Absolutely love to hear from you guys, always.